Good day, everyone. This morning, we are going to talk about constructive feedbacking. Before that, I will introduce to you myself. I am Arlean L. from B.Ed 2E, currently studying at Tarlac State University, taking up the course of Bachelor of Elementary Education, and I am your presenter for today. So here are the contents of my topic for today. First, we will talk about the definition of feedback and, of course, constructive feedback. Next, characteristics and principles of feedback, how to give feedback, examples of constructive feedback, and of course, the strategies used in giving feedback. Let's define the word feedback. When we hear the word feedback, is it a comment, an opinion, advice, result, response, idea, or thoughts? All these words are interconnected with the word feedback. When we say feedback in educational context, it is an information provided to a learner to reduce gap between current performance and desired goal. It helps learners to maximize their potentials in different stages of training, raise their awareness of strengths, areas of improvement, and identify actions to be taken to improve performance. Now, let's move on with the word constructive feedback. Constructive feedback is a supportive feedback given to an individual to help identify solutions to areas of weaknesses they may have. There are two elements that make feedback constructive. First one, the content of the feedback. Constructive feedback is specific, issue-focused rather than a value judgment about the individual, and based on what is observable rather than assuming anything about the person's attitude or motivation. It also includes some specific direction on how to make improvements where needed. Second one is how the feedback is delivered. To be constructive, feedback should not be delivered in a way that provokes hurt feelings, shame, defensiveness, resistance, or a sense of failure. Honest does not mean tactless. Now, let's talk about the purpose of constructive feedback. The purpose of constructive feedback is to give feedback to an individual in a way that will lead to improvements or corrections. This is important as it enhances personal and professional growth in individuals. For example, it is important to improve employee or student morale. reduce confusion regarding expectations and current performance, provide a new perspective, and give valuable insight to the person receiving feedback, and positively impact an individual's behavior. Moving on, let's identify the characteristics and principles of constructive feedbacking. First, we have feedback should be descriptive rather than judgmental, or evaluative. Avoid phrasing feedback in terms of good or bad, right or wrong. Terms such as awful, stupid, brilliant, lazy, wonderful are of little value to the learner. Example: at the beginning of the interview, I noticed that you were facing in the opposite direction looking at your notes, which prevented eye contact between you. Second, make feedback specific rather than general. Feedback should be detailed and specific. Focus on concrete descriptions of specific behavior you can see and hear. Example: looking from the outside, I couldn't tell what you felt when she told you about her unhappiness. Your facial expression didn't change from when you were concentrating on her story. I felt she might not have known if you empathized with her. Next, focus feedback on behavior rather than personality. Behavior is easy to alter, personality less so. We are more likely to think we can change what we do than what we are. Example: you seem to talk quite a lot. The patient tried to interrupt but couldn't quite get into the conversation. Next, feedback should be for the learner's benefit. Patronizing, mocking, superior comments tend to benefit the observer rather than help and encourage the learner. Feedback should be given that serves the needs of the learner rather than the needs of the giver. It should not be simply a method of providing release for the giver. Focus feedback on sharing information rather than giving advice. By sharing information, we leave recipients of feedback free to decide for themselves what is the most appropriate course of action. Next, check out interpretations of feedback. Givers of feedback should take responsibility to check out the consequences of their feedback. Just as in the consultation, be very conscious of the recipient's verbal and nonverbal reactions and overtly check out the response. We should be highly aware of the consequences of our feedback. Next, beware of feedback overload. Overloading a person with feedback reduces the possibility that he will use any of it effectively. Again, we may be satisfying some need of our own, rather than helping the learner. Next, give feedback only about something that can be changed. There is a little point in reminding someone of a shortcoming that they cannot easily remedy. Example: obviously, the stutter is a problem you've had to live with over the years. Is there anything you'd like help with that, or is it something you'd like us to accept and work around? Last, feedback should be solicited rather than imposed. Feedback is most usefully heard when the recipient has actively sought feedback and has asked for help with specific questions. Now, let's talk about how to give constructive feedback. First, state the purpose of your feedback. State or say what you will be talking about and why it is important. Next, describe what you have observed and your reaction. Clearly identify the action or event and how it makes you or other members feel. Third, give the individual an opportunity to respond. After you have stated the purpose, importance, observation, and your reaction, ask the person what they think about it. Fourth, offer specific suggestions or solutions. After you hear the individual out, give input as to how the situation can be improved. And last, summarize everything discussed. Summarize everything that was discussed to avoid any misunderstandings. Also, summarizing helps ensure that the constructive feedback was communicated efficiently. Take a look with these examples. John has been an employee at your company for 6 months. Lately, he seems disengaged and not motivated to work. In order for us to give our feedback a constructive one, our response can be, I have noticed that you don't seem as motivated to do work as you usually do, and it makes me feel like I am doing something wrong. If there are reasons as to why you are feeling this way, I would love to talk with you about it. I think if we meet up once a week to check up on everything, you could much be happier. Next, Michelle has been constantly showing up late for work. Our response can be, when you show up late to work every day, it irritates me because it feels like you are letting our team down. The hours are 9 to 3, and when you show up late to work, it has a negative impact on our team. What do you think? From now on, I really need you to arrive to work on time and change your behavior. Last example, Carol has recently taken a more backseat role in her position as a manager. Our response can be, I noticed that you are not taking as much responsibility and initiative as you used to. It makes me feel like I have not done a good job. Did I say or do something that would make you react this way? I would love for you to address any problems or concerns you have. Next, the strategies in feedbacking. We have oral and written feedback. Let's talk about first written feedback. It provides students with a record of what they are doing well, what area needs improvement, and suggested next step. This feedback needs to be timely, understandable to the students, and actionable so that they can make revisions. There is a advantage and disadvantage of giving written feedback. Let's have first the advantage. In written feedback can be personal, individual, and directly related to a particular piece of work. The students can refer to the feedback again and again and continue to learn from it. Disadvantage of written feedback is when we give a handwritten feedback, it can be hard to read. And you can't refer to your own feedback unless you keep photocopies of work and your comments. And also, tempting to degenerate into shorthand rather than expressing positive or critical comments. Second kind of strategies used in giving feedback is the oral feedback. Oral feedback is a communication form where students receive feedback from their teachers who either correct them implicitly or explicitly or ask them to clarify what they say. The advantage of oral feedback is it is immediate, dynamic and adaptable, and also it is stimulating. But the disadvantage of oral feedback is the students may feel exposed by public feedback. Students may not have the time needed to reflect on the feedback and respond to it. And unplanned responses can become random and fail to develop students' learning in a structured way. And that's all for my report. Thank you for listening and God bless. Here are my references.